All right, how about we get started?
Yeah.
So my name is Jeremy Hetzel, and super excited to be teaching this class. Hopefully it will be a benefit to you. What I would love to do is just take questions at any point as we go. We're going to kind of go through different sections of how I have handled different stuff. But I have been an intern myself, and then I have done internships at 2 different churches. Both of those kind of developed in different ways. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll kind of process and go through. But this is my family. We live in Colorado Springs. This was taken this last summer at Garden of the Gods. We have 5 kids, and number 6 is due in April. Woo! Super exciting. I think we're done after that. We thought we were done at 4, and then God blessed us with the little munchkin at the bottom. And now she's going to have a little sister. So we're excited. I've been at Family of Christ 11 years. I've been in DCE ministry 18. I went to college in Missouri. Realized I wanted to be a DCE. Graduated with my psych degree, which has been very helpful, serving in church. And then started serving at a church in Colorado Springs. It was cool how God opened that door. And started DCE Colloquy through St. Paul. And that's kind of how I jumped in. So been in ministry since 2013. I like to start out normally when I'm meeting new people, just to kind of let them know stuff that I like, to see if there's any connections. In this room, I like Jeremy. He's got a great name. Yeah. Huge Red Sox fan. I love Marvel movies. 10th Avenue North is one of the best. Some drinks that I like. I love the Libby app, because I love to read. But then you can get books for free, either from the library or audiobooks for free, which is pretty legit. I recently, this last year, listened to this book, As You Wish, which has actors from The Princess Bride speaking. So you hear their voices, sharing about their experiences filming the movie. So audiobooks are really cool. Oatmeal cream pies are one of the best breakfasts you can have, because it's oatmeal. And we know oatmeal is healthy. And then it's dairy because of the cream, so it's great. I'm a huge Spurs fan also. I actually helped them win their championship in 2014. Little known fact.
Shooting guard?
Well, let me just explain. So they lost in 2013, which was just crummy. The Heat beat them. What's his name? His name shall not be named. Hit a 3-pointer in Game 6. Spurs lost. They were devastated. And they were about to win it. They lost then in Game 7. Long story short, in 2013, that was in May. In October, they do training camp in Colorado Springs because their coach went to the Air Force Academy. And I know a guy that's a huge fan that works at the academy, and he was like, Jeremy, there's a cadets-only practice. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah. So I showed up. If you see, everyone else is in their fatigues, but there's this guy in the stands with a green shirt. Sticks out like a sore thumb. I stopped the championship video on this scene and saw myself. So just me being there in October, cheering them on, empowered them to win it later on. Pretty awesome. So, why am I so passionate about internships? I think internships have the power to help people stay in ministry, and I think they have the power to encourage students in what is important to stay in the ministry, and I think it gives tons of incredible experience that you can't get in a classroom. So I would love to do a quick poll. I thought this was kind of cool with the new technology. If you have the app, I would love for you to go to our session, and I put a poll question in there about what type of internship you were looking for. So 3 so far are looking for DCE, 1 for music, 1 for outreach. So I was just kind of curious of what is the makeup of people that are in the class today. So we've got 6 for DCE, 2 for music, 1 for outreach, 3 for music. Okay, so most are DCE or music focused. Awesome. Cool. Thanks for doing that. So when I was in high school, I never thought about ministry. I never thought about going into ministry. It was not this is my calling in life. I had a grandfather who was an associate pastor, an LCMS pastor. I just never thought about it. And I went to college, thought I was going to be a handyman, which is hilarious because I can't fix hardly anything. But I helped build our house when I was growing up. I enjoyed doing that work, and so I thought that's what I wanted to do. And within 2 weeks of one another, I called my DCE back home. It's Paula right here. And she said, so I called her up and I was like, I want to help out with youth group this summer. I'm going to be home. I don't know what my job's going to be, but I would love to help out. And she said, well, I'm actually looking at hiring an intern, so would you be interested in applying? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, I'm looking to hire someone for 40 hours for 12 weeks, and would you be interested in taking on that job? And I was like, so you'll pay me to hang out with my friends, because it was my home youth group, lead Bible studies, go on mission trips? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'll apply. And then within 2 weeks of that, I had a guy in my college town who ran a parachurch organization, and he had heard through another volunteer who I was friends with, hey, Jeremy would probably be great. And so within 2 weeks, I had 2 different opportunities to serve within student ministries. And I was like, I think this is what God might want me to do. I'm going to check it out. And so I spent 3 summers. There's me, if you hadn't seen me yet. I spent 3 summers at Zion Lutheran in Avila, Arkansas, serving as intern. And I got tons of quality experience. It was 36 weeks total in that period of time, those 3 years. And even though when I started serving as a DCE, I had not had any official training. But I had had 36 weeks of on-the-job training with my pastor, with Paula, and I had done a bunch of youth ministry stuff. So I think it's incredibly valuable. So now I've been in DCE ministry for about 18 years, and I have been doing an internship program at Family of Christ for almost 8. So here's the folks that we have brought in. It'd be fun if you knew some of them. Here's Jeremy. Hey, buddy.
Hey, Jeremy. He was our DC intern at Calvary.
Was he?
This year.
Whoop, whoop. It's awesome. So we've been doing it since 2015. And so what I'm going to try to do is kind of walk through how we have handled things. And I've done internships at 2 different locations. So I'll try to talk through some of the differences that were in both of those. But again, if you have questions as we go through, why did you handle it this way? Have you seen it handled other ways? I would love to just take questions. Faith Armour, Tim Oberdick, Kessler O'Brien was last year. And then we just hired Michelle.
Okay, I'm interrupting you. Faith and Tim were both at Calvary, so we've got to think of an
Nice!
Wait a minute. 3 out of these 8. There's a trend.
How has Michelle been doing?
She hasn't started yet.
Oh, like
We just hired her, and so she'll come in May and hang out with us from May till August. Yeah, so it's super fun. In this one, Kessler and I were trying to see how large we could open our mouths. Internships are very fun. All right, so some of the key benefits that I've seen, if you have seen other benefits when you have either interned yourself or you have had the opportunity to bring in an intern, I'd love for you to share that. The main thing that I have experienced is fresh energy and new ideas. There's nothing like having, now that we're in almost year 8, having someone come in that has a different perspective, that's there for a significant amount of time, that they can come in and say, hey, what about this, what about that, and they create new opportunities for your group. They have new ideas, new way of doing things, and it engages different kids in ways that I can't engage. Keeping the constant and the new in healthy balance, that's one of the things that I think is most important. I've seen some churches bring in DCE interns like on a yearly basis, and it's just this rotation. And they tend to handle the same thing, like student ministry or something like that. But then the students there don't develop relationships, right? So I think the blessing for me is that I am fully involved in student ministry the whole time that the intern is there. And so students are used to having Jeremy around. But at the same time, there's new people that they get to connect with. There's new students that are closer to their age, that understand TikTok. And some of those type of things that people go, oh, kids connect. So there's this every summer, and there's excitement. Kids are excited right now that Michelle is coming, and they haven't even met her. But there's a constant connection with the church, and then there's new life and new opportunities. The other thing that I think is a huge benefit is us as people in ministry ministering to the intern, pouring life into them, encouraging them. This is how you stay healthy in ministry. This is how you love people well in ministry. This is how you deal with disappointment in ministry. This is how you deal with stress in ministry. And then they go out and bless your church because it's a new person ministering to those around and the community, and then wherever the Lord leads them. So I've seen lots of different huge benefits from intern programs. Any others that anyone can think of that they've seen that just jumps out at them? Go ahead.
I think the benefit of ongoing relationships, because just as you were speaking,
Right.
this person, was here, this person was here, so it's not like they come in, they're done, they're gone.
Yes.
But you build a relationship.
Agreed. Yep. I was going to mention that later, and I forgot that.
Sorry.
Nope. That's great. I agree 100%, because Jeremy and I are still in a relationship, right? So what's the purpose? I think this is the most important question you can ask. I think a lot of times churches tend to say, we just need help. And if that is your purpose, I'm going to say, I don't know that you should have an intern. Because I think it's possible that you will do more damage than bless that intern. So what is your purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing? So I'm going to share the 4 reasons that we have an intern program. First off is a healthy ministry experience. So Steve Johnson, who is DCE, who leads LVR, Lutheran Valley Retreat in Colorado, near Divide. He's been at LVR I think 20 years or something like that. And I've been at Family of Christ for 11. And we started seeing DCEs go on their internship year and then drop out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm sure everyone in here knows someone like that. And sometimes God is moving and he's working and he's leading them different ways. But I go, man, you spent a lot of money not to do that job. So my heart initially was, let's give DCE students a healthy experience for a summer so they can go, man, this is what DCE ministry can be like. So that if or when they experience that hardship, that heartbreak, that, do I really want to be doing this? It's not just bad experience, but it's good experience. So that's one of the main reasons I've started doing it. Also, full-time ministry experience. There is a huge difference between learning tons of great content in the classroom and spending a couple hours a week on a practicum or something versus 40 hours full-time immersed in it for 12 weeks. You learn so much more through experience. I can know this is how I should handle things with a hurting kid. But then I'm there in the moment. It's totally different. How do you handle that? How do you deal with that? How do you love on that kid well? How do you point them to the truth? So just getting full-time ministry experience. The other benefits that are FOC-based, my church-based, first, we give rest for our school year volunteers. So then myself and intern are always at the youth events, and we invite those who are volunteering in student ministry to come back and help out, but we can give key volunteers a break. They don't have to serve in the summer, and we can still do lots of ministry. And then also, we just ramp up a lot of summer activities, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I always wrestled because I said, kids are way more available in the summer, but I don't have volunteers or energy for me to do all of it. So how can I ramp up to meet and engage with more kids and have that? And interns have helped with that. We are looking for cheap labor. This is what I feel like a lot of people who think they want an intern go into it for. And I'm like, if that is your purpose, stop. I feel like a lot of churches, and this might be unfair to say, but a lot of churches that bring in year-long interns, whether it be a vicar or whether it be a DC intern, they're just looking for this. And I think you're missing the whole point of how to bless the intern, because you're blessing the rest of the church by pouring into someone who can then minister for years to come in the body of Christ. So don't have that perspective. May that not be your purpose. All right, so we're going to jump into just some of the important logistics of how our program works and how I have seen it done. We pay $4,500 for the summer. We hold $500 that we set aside, and we tell the host family, which I'll talk in a second, we tell the host family, if you need some funds to help with groceries or other things like that, you can turn in receipts at the end of the summer. We will reimburse you up to $500. Generally, we don't have anyone turn in receipts. And so then at the end of the summer, we're able to say, here's a slightly larger check than you're used to, intern, and bless them with like $500. If you take the $4,500 plus the $5,000, divide that by 12 weeks, 40 hours a week, it's $9 something an hour. I was trying to get closer to 10 so that we would be competitive. Now I don't know what we're going to do. We're probably going to have to talk about it again. Stinking inflation. I'm like, dear Lord, 15? At McDonald's? So we pay $5,000. When we started looking into this, we have a preschool. We talked to a labor lawyer in Colorado. And I would encourage you, if you have a business associate, if you have a school attached to your church, if they can give you a suggestion, and you would probably have to pay, whatever it is per hour. But there were some specific things that I had no clue about that can make it really hard. It can be really hard to have an internship that is paid, which seems ludicrous to me, but it's way easier to have an unpaid internship. And in my brain, I go, if I'm not going to attract anyone if I'm not paying. And if they're going to Concordias, they're going to owe a lot of money. So I like heck want to help them in the summer. So I would really suggest talking to a labor lawyer to see what are the rules and laws. And I'll kind of talk through some of the stuff that they shared with us as we went. Because we had to write things certain ways, and we had to have students sign different things than you would. Like, I don't have my students sign the job description because there's certain rules about, I can't say this is what you're doing. I have to say, our hope is that you're going to learn this, this, and this. And they gave me a big document that basically has the job description in it, but that they sign that says. So just to be on the up and up with your state, whatever that looks like, be sure you try to chat with a labor lawyer.
So is the kicker that you used the word intern in it?
I think so, possibly. My understanding was that any type of internship, when we were bringing someone in and wanted to pay them, it just didn't make it made no sense to me. But we had to be legally accurate. If you're going to do this, you have to do this, this, and this. And it was all verbiage. It was all how we phrased things. And then I would encourage you to encourage your interns to see if they can get educational credit. We have done that multiple times through Seward. And I think we've had someone from Irvine and someone from Texas as well. And so I think they have written papers. And so that's one thing that I would say, if your students can get educational credit while you're there, that'll give you some extra paperwork to do, some extra stuff to juggle. But it's another way you can bless your intern. And then sometimes you see their paper at the end of the summer and you're like, oh, that's awesome, they learned all that. Or, oh, didn't realize that was the experience. Bummer. Logistics. So the biggest thing for us was figuring out housing. To do housing, when I was in Arkansas, and when I was an intern growing up in Arkansas, what we did was I just stayed at my parents' house because they lived nearby. My first intern at Family of Christ was a student from our congregation. That's kind of how we were able to launch it. And he was interested in DC ministry. He stayed at his home and just served for the summer. What we have started doing is recruiting a congregation family that is willing to be the host home for 12 weeks. We had one summer where it was 6 weeks and 6 weeks, and they were the only two families that I could find. And so we did do, hey, Kevin, it's halfway through the summer, you get to move. But what we look for, and I recognize that in your ministry contexts, in your needs, it may be a little different. But the people that I look for are someone who's very engaged in the church, just as passionate about our congregation and what's going on. Typically someone who's in leadership in some way or is leading one of the ministries in some way, but just very connected and involved. I also intentionally look for people who don't have kids at home anymore, because I want my interns to have a place of rest. I want them to experience as much as possible. This is 12 weeks. This is prepping you for what your year-long might look like. So I want them to be able to go back to their house and not feel like they're on. So I had a family 2 days ago email me and say, Jeremy, we would love to host the intern if you haven't found housing yet. And they have a daughter who's a freshman. And I was like, thanks, I will keep that in mind. I actually look for empty nests because I want them to have downtime. And the dad was like, okay, no, I totally get that. We were kind of being selfish. We just want a good role model for our daughter. Thanks for your honesty. So we look for an empty nest. We try to find people who live close to the church. Colorado Springs is really spread out, but there's a lot of people who kind of live close and then people who live 20 minutes away. And so if I can find someone who's with at least 10 minutes, then it's just easier on commute time and rest time and stuff like that. And I very much encourage the family. In my first probably half of this internship program, I didn't do as a good job at this. But I try to encourage through conversations and through some emails for this family to view themselves as an adopted family. Like, this is someone who is in your family for this summer. When you're going to life group, you invite them. When you are doing a getaway to the mountains for a Friday, Saturday, you're inviting the intern. Like, they are your adopted kid for the summer. I think some families do that incredibly well. I think other families leave some to be desired. And so you just kind of pray about what doors is the Lord opening, and may it be a blessing to the intern, and may it be a blessing to the family. But that is how we've handled housing, because I think a lot of it would just cost tons more money if you were trying to rent it out. If you were trying to find an apartment, how can I find an apartment for 12 weeks? And then even if you could find, let's say there's a family that has a basement apartment, because you could do that they said, hey, yeah, we'll take them in. I think it's really powerful for a student to experience and see perspectives of someone who, we're really passionate about this church. This is what life of a volunteer is like. This is what we've experienced and how this church has blessed us. It's a different perspective that interns get. And so I think housing in this way, while potentially uncomfortable too. You're like, well, I'm meeting you for the first time. I'm going to live with you for 12 weeks. vehicle, this is kind of a simple question most students have, but I did have to turn an intern down. They were applying and were really interested, but they didn't have a vehicle. So you just kind of need to think through what's your context, where are they going to live, do they need to have one? If you are in a downtown area and you're going to house them nearby, they may not need a vehicle. I think kids today, more of them are going longer without a vehicle. So I don't know if this is something that you need to put in paperwork or just process as you're doing interviews, but you're going to need a vehicle if you're in Colorado Springs. So thinking through that logistic as well. So recruiting. When I started in Arkansas, and when my church was doing it when I was in college, what we did was, my DCE, Paula, she brought people in who were from the congregation who were interested in experiencing a summer of ministry to see if they were interested in ministry. So you could recruit just from your church, and you could say, we are looking for people who want to serve and see if ministry is what God might have for them. That's what I experienced. That's what we did when I was in Mountain Home, Arkansas, and I had two different interns the 4 years that I was there. And one of those interns, I was telling some of you earlier, her dad was a pastor. She came home for the summer. He was not pastor there anymore. He'd become district president. But she came home for the summer, and she was in DCE classes, and she was going to be a DCE, so she served with me. And she spent the summer, and she realized, this is not a good fit. I didn't realize DCEs have to be up front so much teaching. She wanted to be in the background. She was uncomfortable being up front. So what she did was she went the deaconess route. And I think it was because she spent the summer with us that she realized this is not a good fit. So one pool of candidates would be just your own congregation. If you're looking outside, then I think you contact colleges. And it would depend on what type of internship you're looking for. If you're looking for DCE interns, then you're just hitting up all the DCE programs. And so I wish I would have done this, and I still should probably do this, but I would encourage you to call and talk to the people who are in charge of those programs and ask, hey, can I have 20, 30 minutes of your time? I just want to share our heart for why we want to do this internship, what some of our goals are, and would love to partner with you. If your opportunity is just a sheet of paper that kind of flies by, no one's going to apply. There has to be some type of connection with the program. So I think one of the reasons out of our 8 summers, we've hired 6 from Seward. Part of it is because we are close to there, being in Colorado Springs. The other part is Mark Blanke has seen the blessing it has been to some of his students, and he has done a good job of encouraging specific students to apply. So he will walk up to students and say, hey, I think you should consider this. Now, not all of them consider it, but he sees the benefit of it, and he really encourages it. So what I do is typically early to mid-November, I try to send an info packet. It's just an email. And in that, I include a flyer. I don't even know if they send that out. But it's just a landscape piece of paper that it's basically just a poster that says, hey, do you want to spend a summer in Colorado? Come do an internship at Family of Christ. And my hope is that they'll put it up in the bulletin board in the DCE classroom area. I don't know that students even look at bulletin boards anymore. Like, what's a bulletin board? But that's the thought. The main stuff that I send is the job description and the application. So let's look first. We'll come back to this screen. This is our job description. So I make sure to say very clearly what's the mission statements of our church and our student ministry, how much are we paying, and I say that in other places too, for 12 weeks. Housing is provided by us. And then we just kind of walk through what are your anticipated position responsibilities and learning opportunities, anticipated skills and experience. And that's some of the verbiage that we had to use. but we don't have them sign this. And if you look in your app, I've put this and 2 other documents that we'll look at in here. So you can see the PDFs and you have access to that already. So if you have other questions as we go, or if you want me to just send you the hard copy, like the soft copies, so you can make changes and stuff, email me. I can send you stuff that we have. Why recreate the wheel if you don't have to? Some of the key stuff that we try to focus on is learn how to mentor disciple students in both junior high and high school, learn how to teach Bible lessons and discussions by attending and leading weekly, learn how to plan and implement a wide variety of special summer programs. We'll talk about that in a second. Learn in and outs of leading a youth mission trip. I can talk about that in a minute too. Learn what it's like to work at a church. Attending staff meetings, youth leadership team meetings, board meetings. We try to have them just, you're going to everything. If you were a called worker here at this church, what would you be going to? Just so that they can experience all of it and understand a lot of it. It's interesting when students go to their first board meeting and they're like, what is this? But experience it now while you're still in school and you have that idea. And then, as I said before, our labor lawyer took this and said, let's write it out all this way so you're okay by Colorado law. And so we don't have them sign this. We have them sign the contract that's worded differently. So I send the job description. I also send this application. This last year was the first year that we moved it online. It's always been paper copy, and so I thought maybe that was why we didn't have a lot of applications some years. I was telling some people earlier. This year we had 2 applicants. My highest we've ever had is 7. So my hope is that if more of us are doing this, if more churches are calling out for let's do summer internships, I wish it was a requirement as part of learning in the DCE program or other places. Because I think the huge draw for most DCE students or music leaders or outreach is go serve at camp, which is awesome. I love camp. I think you grow in lots of ways. But serving at camp is completely different than spending the rest of your life working at a church.
I appreciate you saying that you contacted Mark Blanke. Let me just add a phrase in there.
Yeah.
Programs like this need advocates on the campuses.
Yes.
So I appreciate that part is being included.
Yes. Agreed. Because we'll just get ignored. Like, camps do a good job of going to schools and recruiting. If you have 6 friends that you love that are going to this camp, you're like, dude, I'm spending the summer with my friends. And if we had 10 healthy churches that were doing DCE internships every summer, I think it would start to become more of the norm, and this expectation of, oh, that's awesome. Because I think, and Jeremy could probably speak to this, but I think when you spend a summer at a camp, God stretches and grows you in certain ways. But when you spend a summer at a church serving, I think the growth is so much greater because you're doing or experiencing many of the things that you will do at a church. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because when I first got there, you were like, you're going to plan Wild Wednesdays or whatever,
Yeah.
summer stuff. And I was like, okay, I've never made a graphic organizer, like a chart that shows what we're going to do.
Right?
So I got that experience, like I do different office work that I never thought about doing.
Office work.
I got to hang out with kids,
Right?
like high school kids.
Mm-hmm. And not just 1 week at a time.
Learn that you have to adapt to them to like minister to them.
Right?
So that's when I got into like vines and things that they were learning and things like that.
Yeah.
They were like,
And vines are gone now.
which at camp you're just doing camp stuff, so it's like
Yes.
you're learning how to share your faith with the kids,
Uh-huh.
but then with the internship you were able to learn how to actually do ministry with the kids and like get into their world. And,
Right.
get to work with church members too, like how
Right.
to minister to a
Parents.
person,
Yeah.
So it's a
Um,
different experience.
the Roths still talk about you.
What?
The Roths
Yeah.
still, and they still spell my name wrong
There's a good number of people.
because they spell it your way.
There's a good number of families from that church that still
Yeah.
keep up with me. And
It's pretty awesome. So,
I got a question.
yep.
Related, but sidebar. Do you know what camps are paying for summer these days?
Steve's here, so I'm sure you could ask. I think we pay more.
Well, I would think a church would probably pay more than a camp these days.
It was around like 3,200, I think, for a summer.
Okay.
Or no, 2,200.
Yeah, it's more like in the 2000s, and then you get housing and food. Sure.
Right.
But yeah, it's
Working a lot more hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good experience, but you definitely would if someone needs money for college, I'd pick this.
Well, and I would go, if we had, I just wish every DC intern had to have this experience before they went on internship. Because I've heard, and I haven't heard as much in the last 5 years, but I just heard so many students who just bounced after they had a bad internship experience. And I'm like, ugh. Because they were great. So we just moved the application online. I have attached this in the app as well. But we ask a bunch of general questions, stuff that we want to know about you, stuff about your faith life. You can pull it up and look at all the questions. I didn't think it was worth going through all of it here. But we did just move it online. Our church, a year or two ago, started using CCB as our database, church community builder. And so it's really easy to put stuff online and build your own forms. And so I took all of this and just put it in the application. And I was hoping, now it's online, we're going to have tons more applicants. Because it's easy. And we got 2. But praise God, we got 2.
Yeah.
At first I was like, man, we might not have no applicants. If I didn't have an intern now, after this is year 8, I would be like, what are we going to do? I'm up a creek. What did you say?
And if you were teaching this class and being like, I don't have any.
Yeah. It's a dream. So I send in early to mid-November the flyer, the job description, and the application. Just one email to all 5 DCE programs and say, hey, can you email this out to your students? They do. I think a lot of people miss it, which is why you need an advocate on campus. If you were having trouble getting it started, I would encourage you to go to the closest college near you and say, hey, can I come speak to your DCE class? Can I come speak? Hey, I'm doing an internship. Just face, name, something that'll grab attention so that you can get some applicants. So we leave the application open November to January. The first year or two I did this, I sent it in, I think, early December or early mid-December, because I was like, let them talk about it while they're off for Christmas break. And then I found out none of them look at email that whole period of time, so they had no clue. So then it was January, and they didn't even know about it. So we try to send it early November so that they see it, they maybe thought about it, they can talk about it over Thanksgiving, or send it again. I try to send another, hey, can you send this out again in early January? And we have mid-January as the deadline, and then we do interviews early February. Because I don't want to leave people hanging, because I can only hire 1. So normally we interview 3 or 4. Typically it's at least 3. Sometimes it's only 2. We do it through Zoom. So I was really thankful I'd used Zoom a couple times before COVID, because then I wasn't like, oh, I know how to use this. I have a leadership team that also serves as my interview team. So if you do not have a leadership team that you can go to and brainstorm and talk things through and just process ideas, then I would tell you, get one yesterday. I didn't have one until I started working at Family of Christ. My pastor at the time told me I should have one, and I was like, great, what do I do with them? Because I was just used to making all the decisions or thinking through stuff. And so we wouldn't have an internship program now if I didn't have that leadership team, because they helped me work through the questions. When should I send this? What's the job description? All that stuff, all that extra work. Once you get it done, then you just roll with it. But the amount of effort it takes, and when you are so busy with everything going on just in normal ministry, big things like this just don't happen. So we hop on Zoom with my leadership team, and we kind of rotate through asking questions. I included our questions in there as well. A lot of our questions are similar to the application. Some of them are different, but it's different hearing someone talk and share in person as much as Zoom can be, talking through that experience versus reading about it. And then we have some different questions too. But it's really interesting. My prayer going in is always, Lord, make it clear who it's supposed to be. And then we finish all our interviews, like a couple weeks ago, we finished our 2 interviews. And then I just asked the team, what do you guys think? Who stood out to you best, etc. And I didn't want to influence that, so I spoke last. And they all lined up with what I thought. And we are always looking for the most emotionally and spiritually mature student we can find. I realize that we would be equally beneficial or even potentially more beneficial to students who are not as far in their faith journey. But one of the other goals, I guess it's a side goal, is I want to bring in students who passionately love Jesus, are in their early 20s, and can serve as a role model for my 17, 18, 16-year-olds who go, whoa, look at them. Look how much they love Jesus. They're 3 years older than me. I could be like that in 3 years. And so generally, we hire students who have finished their junior year in college. So they're in their February of their junior year when we hire them. I have found that typically works best because they will have a lot of the classroom content, but not the experience. So you are getting them right before they jump in. It's also nice because then they're typically 21, and the oldest I'll have in youth group is 17, maybe 18, so there's still 3 years difference. It's kind of a big deal when you have an 18-year-old and then you have a 19-year-old serving as intern. And, hey, this is someone new, oh, I think you're cute, or, you just want to avoid all of that. So I try to have older students. I did 1 year hire a freshman, which was a great experience. And Michelle is a sophomore this year. So we are not opposed to hiring younger, but that has just been what has served us best. So that's all the prep work. Before we go into summer experience, any other questions?
You keep talking about the DCE program, I think it's awesome, but
Yeah.
I would love to have a music intern.
Yep.
And I've talked to a college, but they don't have any, I guess I could send them an application like what you're saying, and maybe that would help the process. But
Sure.
there doesn't seem to be any process with, if you're not a DCE,
Uh-huh.
to how to get these colleges to realize the importance of.
Yep. So Irvine, yeah, go ahead. Sure.
So what I did is started going, I know John George again, Irvine, California, and frankly it was based not in a process but in a relationship with him because I trust John's eye and discernment and instruments he knows and he knows what our model can do within. So it was all within the leadership reputation and relationship. And now we're looking to expand it to other campuses because we've now got our feet
So you
wet.
have a music intern?
Yeah, summer, and then I pull in high school too. So we can connect specific, because you're right, there's not a practical experience for DPM or any music things within our church body that
Right.
we're aware of.
Same here.
And John and I have talked about developing that aspect, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. But it is.
It's just, there's not this automatic kind of.
Correct, yeah, there's a lot more.
But I would even say there's this year-long internship for DCE program, and there's a vicarage. There's tons of DCEs that don't do a summer internship program like this.
I understand the difference of it, but I mean, more and more occupations are requiring or looking at interns.
Yep.
So it really makes sense as a student to have those opportunities.
Agreed.
Before college.
Agreed.
I'm a Concordia and Harvard grad, and one of my minors is your short leadership program, which is
But they do practical experiences, and they highlight that if you can get plugged into a church in the summer, I think that they do really encourage that. John Bloomberg.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Problem solved.
And again, the more you can try to develop a relationship or say, hey, this is what our program is about or what we're trying to do or why we want to do it, if the contact at the school recognizes the benefit of that, then they will become your advocate.
Right.
And that'd be awesome.
Does anybody have any experience with pastoral interns?
Pastoral intern experience?
Only with St. Louis Seminary with, what's the program they send out? Not interns, they had, sorry, total line blank.
Field workers?
Field worker.
It's kind of a field worker,
Okay.
yeah. But it's only for a couple months. St. Louis had a program.
And I think this type of program could work the same way if they weren't taking summer classes, because sometimes they are.
Undergrad. Someone
yeah.
that,
Totally.
To show them,
Oh, that level.
because we have the benefit of some longevity on our staff at the end.
Sure.
To see, this is what team ministry looks like for
Right.
someone that's looking at going into pastoral ministry.
Yeah.
St. Louis does the immersion program. That's what it is.
Ann Arbor does what they call STEPS, which is typically during the year, but where they help connect pre-STEM students with churches to be getting those field experiences during the time. So, again, potential for summer opening up there.
Awesome. Cool. Any other questions just about setup before we jump into summer stuff? Summer stuff won't take as long. So when intern arrives, typically middle May is when we have them arrive. I have them come in on a Saturday night. We do all of our stuff on Sundays. So Sunday, so they arrive Saturday, typically around 5 o'clock or so. I meet them at the church, and they go out to dinner with my family and me. I want them to get to know my wife, my kids, me, just welcome, we're glad that you're here. We go back. We have started doing a tour. I don't know if we did a tour when you came in. But we started doing a tour. Our church is kind of built like the Starship Enterprise. And so it can get very confusing. And so I like to give interns, this is the lay of the land when you show up tomorrow for your first day. And kind of talk them through schedule for the next morning. We typically introduce them at the church, have them come up during the services, stand there, meet, greet people. And that first Sunday is just watch. You're not in charge of anything. You're just learning. You're meeting some people. You're kind of soaking in the experience. And then after we have done the church tour and dinner with the family, then I typically, they'll follow me in their vehicle, but drive to the host home and we'll hand them off. I don't typically stay long. It's hey, let me carry your stuff. Hey, this is, meet, blessings, see you tomorrow. Head on out and let them start to settle in and kind of start developing that relationship with the host home. And then early on, at least typically the first 2 weeks, is a lot of watching and learning. How do I handle stuff on this Sunday night before Memorial Day? What are we doing? Attending staff meetings, learning culture, etc. And modeling my own healthy habits. So I have learned a lot in the last 5 years about what does it mean to abide in Christ so that he will bear fruit through me. I feel like much of our Christian church culture is built on you have the skills, God has called you there, go serve. And I think that's why we see DCEs and other pastors and music worship leaders and outreach people burn out. And so if interns can learn healthy habits early on, they will be blessed the rest of their ministry life. So I try to model, I get to church and I have quiet time when I'm at church. I spend my time with Jesus right when I get there. I realize that some people say, Jeremy, that's not fair. It's not fair that you do that because our parishioners don't get to do that on the job. And I go, Yes, but every job has its perks. If you are a tax person, you do your taxes for free. If you're a pilot, you get to fly for really cheap other places. If I'm supposed to be the person that is helping others in my congregation walk closely with Jesus, then I have to be walking closely with Jesus. So I try to model healthy ministry habits, and then set the tone very much, and by that I mean that there are certain expectations. This is your responsibility. This is what you're going to take care of. But at the same time, I am here to minister to you, intern. You can do everything exactly as I want. I will love you exactly the same if you don't. I'm here to equip you for the rest of your ministry career. And I love when we bring in juniors, because then we get to chat some during their senior year, and then when they find out where they're going to be placed for their year-long internship, then we keep talking. And I find out, how's it going? What's going well? What's not going well? And try to maintain that relationship as we go. So intern development, there's lots of different things that we can talk about in this. One of the first things that I do is, so they arrive on Saturday. Sunday is their first church experience, youth group at night, worship services in the morning. And then typically Monday morning, I do an hour and a half vision cast. And I've put something together that I do with all of my student ministry volunteers. So I use that same thing. So I sit down and I say, we're just going to work through what is our student ministry all about, what are our different programs, what do we offer, and what do we care about the most. And so I work through that typically that first Monday, because I want them to understand, okay, we offer stuff on Tuesday nights, on Sunday nights, on Wednesdays during the summer. And what we care about is that you are a safe place where kids can be real and know they're loved and learn about Jesus. And so how we set that up, what are we trying to do? But just paint that picture very early on. I also have interns work in my office with me. Most of the time, not always. Office near mine was open, and so Tim worked in the office right next door to me. But typically they work in the office with me. I'm sitting at my desk. There's a big table in my office. They sit there because I want to emphasize, and this is probably just my relational bent, but there's times when you think of things and you just want to ask questions. And I want to be available for those, hey, what about this questions? Because I think that's just as important as the work that they're doing for us. So there are times that I know, okay, I have these two things to do. I have to enter attendance for our Wild Wednesday yesterday, and I have to do this, and that should take me 30 minutes. And instead I leave 2 hours later, because in the middle of that 30 minutes, there's this excellent question about, why do you do this? Why have you organized it this way? Have you heard about this? And we just then talk and process. And so I try to be very intentional about just being present, because I know this is 12 weeks, but I can pour a lot of my own knowledge and experience into interns. The other thing that we very much try to do is give them stuff that they own all to themselves. We started doing Wild Wednesdays right away, but I think I've grown in how to help with this some. But Wild Wednesdays are just fun fellowship events for our youth. So, intern comes in and it's their baby the whole time. They have a $300 budget that they get to decide whatever they want to do with. Is that going to pay for adults to go participate in things? Is that going to pay for supplies? What is that going to pay for? And you have to plan 10 weeks typically of fun stuff every Wednesday. It can be Wednesday nights, it can be Wednesday during the day, it can be a combination of the two, it can be paid, it can be unpaid, like sky's the limit. And so typically I give interns, hey, this is some of the stuff that people have done in the past, just to give you a starting point. But they own it all. I don't ask them if they're prepared. I show up and we see how it goes. Sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't think about this. Oh, I didn't think about this. Oh, I totally meant can you, Jeremy, go? And yeah, I'll go buy some extra melons. Kessler this last summer did Melon Olympics or something. Well, that was one of the games we played. So instead of Ultimate Frisbee, it was Ultimate Melon, and you just chucked cantaloupes. And they fell and broke. And they had people put melon armor on, and like it was the melon games or something. I don't even remember what he called it. But so, like, would I ever plan that? No, I don't like getting dirty. It's a mess. And I'm going to have a hard time encouraging kids to get all, like, cantaloupe-y if I don't want to get cantaloupe-y. But Kessler loved it. So he just let it. And it was awesome, and the kids had a blast, even though some of them thought this is weird. So they just own the entire thing. So I would say whatever program, if it's music, if it's outreach, if it's pastoral, whatever it is, you find something that they can just own that requires a budget. Because that is going to equip them. Like Jeremy said, he'd never figured out just even like putting the poster together, posting Instagram stuff about, hey, this is what we're doing next, creating those posts. Like, he learned a lot of skills because he was in charge of Wild Wednesdays that I could have told him, hey, this is what you need to do. But you learn way more when it's fully on your shoulders.
Yeah, it was really frustrating.
Why, Jeremy?
Because you said you're going to plan this Wild Wednesdays thing. And I was like, what's that? And then you're like, it's just fun events for kids.
Yeah.
And you didn't even give me the pass. I had to ask for it. I was scared to ask it because I was like, shouldn't I know what to do? And then I was like,
no.
What have people done in the past? And then he told me, but then it took me like having the initiative to do that.
Right.
So it was frustrating, but it's important to not like be micromanaging, because if you are, then...
Well, and especially if you show up at a church and you're the only DCE, and if the pastor's like, hey, go do this, you just need to jump in and go.
I showed up to internship, and he was like, you're planning confirmation. And I was like, what do you mean?
On internship.
Yes.
Woo! So whatever it is, if you think Wild Wednesdays are a great idea, steal it. But if you have something else that's just coming to mind right now, I could give them whatever. Just let them own it as much as possible. We do exit interviews, and one of those students, I think year 2, said, hey, I'd really wish I would have had a budget with Wild Wednesdays. And I was like, pfft. So now I budget $300 that they can do whatever they want with. They have to turn in receipts. And I don't do any of that stuff. And sometimes they do a good job, and sometimes they go, like this last summer, it was like, dude, I have $80 in cash. I don't know where it came from. But it was for something that I was supposed to turn in. I was like, all right, let's work through this. Sorry, Sharon. There is other things. If you've never heard of LeaderTrex, LeaderTrex is an organization outside of Chicago that has a lot of great resources for leadership. They have a book called Student Leaders Start Here. And that would be a great thing that you could work through. It's spiritual giftings. It's how you're wired. There's 2 or 3 other things. And it's specifically for high school students, but you could use it for college. They also have some free resources, blueprints or something, where it's stuff that they use because they have mission trips in the summer, so they have interns. And so trip leaders work with trip interns. What's your goals for this week? How are you doing? So they have some of that paperwork. So I have just not done as good a job with using some of those things regularly. But there are other resources out there, and I can point you to some of the stuff. Or if you want to email me, I can send you some of the stuff that I have used. That I just think the more we can pour leadership skills into our interns, the better. The other thing that we do is we do mission trips with LeaderTrex, and I send the intern on the other trip. We've always done 2 trips every summer, so I lead one, intern leads the other. So they don't do all the pre-work, but they do the, I just said do. They do the on the trip, you're in charge. You're the one that's making all the decisions to get the team to the location. Once you're there, LeaderTrex staff or your student leaders, depending on what level trip you are, run everything. But I would say whatever you can do to give them, whether that's, hey, you're planning the whole worship set and you're in charge of all that. You are planning the 2 Sundays at the end of the summer. You're doing all of the worship planning for that. Like, whatever you can give that they just own and carry will carry a lot of weight. Ends, I already said, exit interview. So I typically take them to lunch somewhere. If I convince them to go to Red Robin, then we do that, because that's my favorite place. Exit interview, and I want to hear what went really well, what didn't. And sometimes there's stuff that we've already talked about through the summer that I know has been hard. Sometimes it's a host home situation. Sometimes it's a student relationship. Sometimes it's a stressor at just their own home life. Whatever's going on. But I want to hear, what did we do well and what could we do better? So one of the things that Kessler said this last summer is, I really wish I would have had some regular duties on Sunday mornings. And I was like, it's a great idea. Like, we could have had you do announcements, because myself, Katie, who serves with me at Family of Christ, and Pastor Mark, we rotate and do that. He did some children's messages, but we could have given him something different to do every Sunday morning. You're a greeter this week. You're this week. You're that. And that's just a simple add to the program that we already have. So it's always been super helpful. And I try to use evaluation throughout the year, so the summer. So the first time that a student intern leads Bible study for our Sunday night student ministry activities, I will ask them things like, hey, what do you think went well? What do you think didn't go well? Sometimes they ask me, and then I will share. But if they don't ask, I don't typically share. I might ask some questions like, what do you think about this? Oh, so what do you think about this? Or why did you handle this way? Or whatever, and give them a chance to process. But I want to create a safe atmosphere that feedback is always good. At least here. There's other locations where it's not safe, and it's just hard or painful sometimes. But I want our internship to provide regular evaluation so that they are growing in whatever skills they are employing. And the exit interview is just the opportunity for the whole summer. So that's why, I said this already, but that's why we have a budget for Wild Wednesdays. Anything that we add or change for Michelle this summer for Sunday morning experience will be because of that. I want to hear what was really beneficial to you, what could we tweak or change. And then the other thing is something we already said, just staying connected. Like, we are brothers and sisters in Christ, called to serve his church in various ways. Let's continue to stay connected. That it's not well, thanks for serving us, bye-bye. But that we follow up and continue to encourage and minister and walk with.
As I hear you speak, what's ringing in my heart, my head is, you're a mentor.
Yes.
And the position that you are in can be long-lasting.
Yes.
And probably one of the more powerful things that you can do, legitimately because you have that connection,
right,
is to ask later on, how are you doing?
Yes.
Because a lot of times, not enough people ask that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
They may say it in the morning, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
But if it comes from you, it's different.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy and I got to have conversations senior year during his internship. Yep. He lived in the Springs for, 6 months? 8 months? 9 months. And so we got to see him regularly then. Faith, I've gotten to talk to numerous times. Tim, I talked to last week before I saw him here. Like, continue pouring into those relationships.
We need that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
With your exit interview, do you do anything like personnel review, like you would for other staff, as far as your assessment of their gift sets and performance, leaving notes? And because there's obviously the primary route will be encouragement, in my estimation.
Agreed. Yeah.
But also there can be hard truths shared too about, hey, out of love, here's some can serve you as you move into your next place.
Yeah. I haven't included that, but I think that's primarily because we're kind of picky about who we bring in. And so most of the interns that we've had, I've not had like, Oh man, and I think most of those conversations have happened as we've gone through the summer. Like, hey, I saw you lead this way. Remember to think about this, or work this in, or make sure you're including the gospel, or whatever the encouragement is. So I haven't done it in a formal way at the exit interview, but I do think if there was something very clear to me, like the young lady that was pursuing DCE because her dad was a pastor, I was prepared to talk to her about, I don't think this is a great fit, and here's why, and she beat me to it because she recognized it, and so I didn't have to be the one.
And I think the point is to, like you said, have those conversations throughout the summer.
Uh-huh.
Because you're just kind of, if you saw something, you're like, I'm going to hold this till the exit interview. But I think there's enough conversation with, time together helps a lot with that, because you start to have those real conversations.
But
half the questions I asked you were about personal life stuff. I think.
Yeah. But I think you have to set up the space for that to happen. You either have to be really intentional with where they're working, so it's a natural thing, or you have to say, if we're not working in the same room, I am going to meet with you at this time every week so we can process what happened the week before, so that you can do that. Because if you don't do that, if you don't allow that natural space for questions, then it just won't happen.